My name is Safilya, and I look after businesses, corporate business development region for US. And I thank all of you for joining this webinar. So I'm here as your moderator for this webinar, and I will not take much of your time. I will quickly give you guys an introduction about Vinsys. So basically, we are 23 years old company. We are certified by ISO 9001 2015 certification. We have trained around 1.2 million professionals across the globe. We have a presence in 12 plus countries across the globe, where New York, Dubai, and Australia being the regional headquarters handling respective regions. And apart from that, we have a capacity to serve around 2,400 delegates globally. Uh, we have around 1,000 plus trainers working with us across the globe, which is the reason why language is not a barrier for us anymore. And in last 23 years, we were able to serve around 3,000 plus companies across continents. So basically, we work in around seven verticals where corporate training and development is our forte. Apart from that, we work in project management and IT service consulting. We work in software services, manpower management, foreign language services, training and infrastructure management, and we are working as an international certification and testing center as well. So Vinsys works in around 300 plus technologies, technical, non-technical domains, which includes latest technologies like cloud computing, IT security, project management, soft skills, and other sectors like banking, finance, 3D design, software training, etc. So just to give you a bit about our clientele, we are in government sector. We are working with United States Department of Energy. We are working with FEMA. We are working with internal revenue services. In IT services, we are working with Atos, Cognizant, HCL, and many more companies. And apart from that, we are also working with Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Deloitte, TD Bank, and PNC Financial Services. The list is very long, but due to clients' time constraint, I'm sharing few of the highlights. So we are partnered with Autodesk, IBM, Cisco, Microsoft partners. We are partners with CompTIA, Oracle, Hybris, then PMI, Amazon Web Services. Then we are partnered with Unity, Skillsoft, PeopleCert, and many more. So this is a brief introduction about Vinsys, and we have a process that we follow when we are catering to lots of training requirements. So we do pre evaluation, post evaluations, hands-on training, as well as the follow-up sessions to be conducted after 45 days of a training. And we don't believe it as a training; we believe doing interventions, which is the reason why we were able to retain 98% of our clientele in last 23 years. So this was about Vinsys. Now I will introduce Elise, who is the expert for Revit, and actually myself, I'm Autodesk certified instructor for Inventor and Fusion 360 as well. So now I will ask Elise to take over this webinar and give some of the insights of Revit, how it is done, and what are the conduits in Revit. So yes, I think she's facing some technical difficulties, but anyways, she'll be back. So till the time, I request all of you guys to be on mute whenever you can, and if you want to ask a few questions, you can unmute yourself, or else you can use your chat window. We will keep Q&A session for last 15 minutes of this webinar, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. Let me just check with Elise what is happening with her, and I'll get back to you. We'll directly kick off with the session. All right. I think I made everyone very quiet. I talk a lot, I know that. Ankuna and Satish, can you please check with Elise if she's joining back?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
My
she's
bad.
back. Not a
I'm
problem,
back.
Elise. Yeah. So I have
So,
already given your introduction. So you can
okay.
just start sharing your screen and you can take over. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for covering for me while I had a little technical difficulty. Okay, so today's presentation is going to be about conduits. I developed a class system, a class curriculum for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers a couple of years ago, pre-COVID days. And conduits was one of the things that the electrical workers were most interested in. It isn't very well documented in Autodesk Revit's help, and there isn't a lot of written material about it. Um, so I did write a book about covering the topics that the IBEW said they were most interested in. You can purchase the book from my publisher, SDC Publications, or on Amazon if you like this material or if you're more interested in learning more about doing electrical design inside of Revit. Today's webinar is going to focus on conduits. I have a lot of material to cover. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to cover in 45 minutes or so, but we'll see what we can get through. Just to kind of review what a conduit is, it's a tube used to protect and route electrical wiring in a building or structure. And that tube is usually rigid PVC piping, but it can also be galvanized steel or some other material, which insulates and protects the wiring from weather and critters. There's some very basic steps that you can take when you're designing conduits inside of Autodesk Revit. You want to define your conduit type, and use conduit families. You may recall that Autodesk Revit relies very heavily on the use of families and family types. You want to create a view filter so that you can see different conduit colors. That makes it easier for you to identify different conduits, how they're being used, and how they're being routed. And you want to assign a filter to views where you want to see the conduit colors. So I'm going to try and walk you through some of the steps that you would need to do in order to do that. Um, you want to start by coming up with conduit standards, and use the conduit standards that are available in your company. Conduit standards will provide consistency across a project. They allow better efficiency, uh, and it supports better communication between team members. And oops, sorry. I want to end this show here and go over to Revit. And I'm here. I want to just kind of walk you through how to get to the conduit standards dialog box and what's available in there. So to get there, you want to go to the Systems tab on the ribbon, which is up here. So you're going to the Systems ribbon. And notice we've got HVAC, we've got fabrication, mechanical, plumbing, and piping. And over here is all your electrical panels. And to get to the options for electrical, you can use this little down arrow right here, or you can type ES. ES is a shortcut key for electrical settings. So this is going to bring up a little dialog box, and you'll notice you have conduit settings right here. All right, and we can control the rise drop symbology, and we can also control the sizes. And notice we have different standards available. We have EMT, IMC, RMC, RNC, Schedule 40, and RNC Schedule 80. You can also create a new standard name. So you'll notice these are all rigid rigid metal. Okay, if we wanted to add a standard for GRC, we would click New Standard, and we would say GRC, and we want to base it on RMC, which is rigid metal conduit, and then say OK. All right, and then we can add sizes as needed. Okay, so we just created a new standard very quickly and easily in this dialog box. We're going to say OK. All right, so that's the end of that first lesson. I'm going to close this, and I'm not going to save. And I want to go to the Conduit family file, which is right here. And I want to open the one power. So I have my browser organized here in electrical, and I have a floor plan that says first floor power. So I'm going to click on that. All right. And then I'm going to go to the systems tab again on the ribbon. And I want to select the conduit tool. So my conduit tool's right here. And notice it has a shortcut key, CN. So if you like using shortcut keys, you can use CN to add a conduit. And I'm going to select conduit on the ribbon. And notice it says conduit without fittings. And it's defaulted to the RNC Schedule 40. I can also just select conduit. All right. And I'm going to create, I want a conduit without fittings. So I'm going to click conduit without fittings. And the reason why I want a conduit without fittings is if I want to create a schedule run for the conduits, if you use the conduit with fittings, they won't appear in the schedule. This is something that I think Revit needs to fix. But in the meantime, we need to use a conduit without fittings if we want to create a conduit run schedule. And we're going to create a new conduit family. So we're going to go through the process of creating a new family. I'm going to select edit type. And notice it says system family conduit without fittings, conduit. And under standard, instead of EMT, I'm going to say RNC Schedule 40. Okay, so this is a rigid non-metal conduit, usually a PFC pipe. And then I'm going to say duplicate. And I'm going to give it a new name. I'm going to say emergency I 480 277 volt. I'm giving it basically, I'm assigning it how I would like it to appear in my conduit run schedule. And I'm going to say okay. All right, now I can go down to the fittings and I can assign the type of fitting that I want. So for the bend, I'm going to say I want a conduit elbow plain end PVC standard. For the T, I'm going to say I want a PVC because these are all PVC, right? And I just expanded the dialog box to make it a little bit easier for you to see what I'm assigning. And then for the cross, I'm going to say PVC. And for the transition, I'm going to say a PVC. And for the union, I'm going to say a PVC. So I'm basically saying that this is a PVC conduit, and I'm using PVC fittings. And then under the description, I'm going to tell it what color I want to assign it. So I'm going to say red. Okay. And then as I go through, I can create more types. So my next one might be emergency low. And I would say 120. 208 volt, and say okay, and give it a different color. And I'll give it a color of a magenta. All right, and so I would go through and create all the different conduits that I would want so that it would be easy for me to identify each conduit type using a color. And I'm just going to say okay. And I'm going to close this file so that I'm ready for the next one. And I'm not going to save it. I'm just going to come back here and just talk a little bit about how I'm going to use view filters. View filters are used to override the default graphic display, controls the visibility of your elements, and in this case, we're using them to allow you to easily identify conduit types. So I'm going to walk you through how to set up your view filters for your conduits. So I'm going to in there, come here. All right. And I want to be on conduits underscore views to define my view filters. Okay. So I want to go to my vault level floor plan. Okay, so you can see that. And I'm going to go to the view ribbon. And on the view ribbon, I have a tool right here where it says filters, and that's where I'm going to define my view filters. So I'm clicking there. And notice that I already have rule-based filters. These are out of the box. These are the filters that come with Revit. So I want to create a new filter. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select new. And I'm going to type emergency high UG for above ground, meaning this is going to be my filter for showing all my emergency high above ground conduits. And notice I have define rules enabled. I'm going to say okay. And then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to say conduit fittings and conduits. Okay. And here I say all selected. Okay. And I'm going to add a rule. Okay. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to say all selected conduits, and I'm going to go to the description. And remember, when I defined the conduit type, I also said, gave a description of the color. So I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to say red dashed. And notice that it already has a bunch of descriptions. These are all the descriptions for all the conduit types that I created already. So any conduit that has a description that says red dash will be added as the filter. And notice when I hit apply, it says emergency high user ground gets added. Remember, apply allows you to keep the dialog box open and create more filters. If you hit OK, that's going to close your dialog box. So if we want to create a new filter for a different conduit setting, we're going to say new, and I'm going to say emergency low underground, and I'm going to say okay. And again, I want it to apply to conduits and conduit fittings. And I'm going to go to description equals, and then I pick the color that I set up for my emergency low conduits, and that's going to be magenta dashed. And I'm going to say okay. And that's going to create 2 filters. Now, if I wanted to duplicate, you don't just need to, once you've got something defined, I can highlight this emergency high underground view filter, and I can say duplicate. And now I've got a duplicate one, and I can rename it. Okay. And I'm going to say that's going to be a normal low above ground. So now I have a normal low above ground. And notice it's already assigned to the conduits and conduit filters. And I'm going to change that to blue dashed. So once you've created one of your view filters, you can either keep going new, or to save a little time, you can just duplicate and then change what you want to do. Okay. And that's it for how to create view filters. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Once you've created your view filters, you need to apply them to a view, because you're going to use your visibility graphics dialog to enable those view filters. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Revit. I'm going to close this. Okay. And I'm going to the conduit view setting drawing. And I'm going to go to the vault level floor plan under electrical. I'm going to go to the view ribbon. And I want to go to visibility graphics. And, you know, there's more than one way to go to visibility graphics dialog. You can go VG, you can go VV, or you can come to the view ribbon and select the visibility graphics tool. And you'll notice there's a tab right here that says filters. So I'm going to click on filters. All right, and we have no filters applied to this view. I'm going to click add. And here are all the filters that have been assigned or created. And we can add these filters. So I'm going to say I want to add the emergency low and the emergency high and the normal high and the normal low, and say okay. These are all the filters that we created, you know, earlier. And then I'm going to say okay. Oh, sorry. And I need to go back here. And I'm going to the emergency high, and notice that in the lines I can change the line, the pattern. So in the lines, I'm going to click here, and in the pattern, I'm going to say dashed, and in the color, I'm going to say red. Say okay. Okay, and I try to, and I'm going to give it a little more boldness. I'm going to say 3 for the weight. And it gives you a little preview in the dialog showing how it would look. All right. And I'm going to go to the emergency low, and I'm going to set it to dash. And I'm going to set the color to magenta. And I'm going to set the weight to 3 and say OK. And then I'm going to go to the normal low underground. And I'm going to set the pattern to dash and the color to blue and the weight to 3 and say OK. And here's the normal high. And I'm going to set that to dash and set the color to cyan and set the weight to 3 and say OK. Okay, so you should see that we've got overrides all the way through. And I'm going to say apply and OK. I'm going to go back here for a second. Okay, so now let's talk about actually adding our conduits. Because once you set up your families and how you want them to look in your views, then you're ready to start actually placing them. You need to understand that you need a minimum distance and angle to place each conduit. If you are only placing like 6 inches of conduit, you're going to get an error. You need to have a decent amount of conduit. You always want to start the conduit perpendicular to the face, and you have to have a conduit connector defined on the device in order to add a conduit. Okay. So I'm going to close this. Not save. Okay. And here I am on EL2A. Nope, this one. Okay. And I haven't added any conduits here. All right. So I want to select this device. And this is a lighting and appliance panel board. This is out of the box Revit. So it hasn't, it's nothing special. It's nothing new. All right. If I want to add a conduit, notice it's got these different connector points. Okay. And I can hover over and modify where they're at. If I click on a connector and right click, notice I can select draw conduit from face. So I just select the connector that I want to use to add a conduit. I'm going to right click and select draw conduit from face. Okay, and notice here I've got a little building section view. Okay, and I want to adjust the position of this connector. So I'm going to change where it is on the bottom of the panel and say that I want it 6 inches from that edge, from this left edge here. And notice in Revit, you can just type 0 for 0 feet and 6 for 6 inches. You don't have to put in the units. So I'm going to click there. All right. And then I'm going to click on finish connection right here on the ribbon. Right. And notice it's showing this conduit right here. And I can change the diameter right here. So I'm going to change the diameter to 4 inches. And I can change the type of conduit that I want to apply. So I want it to be the emergency high 480 277 volt overhead conduit. And this is one I already signed. And notice that it automatically placed that conduit. I'm going to bring it down about 3 feet 6 inches and then move it over to the left just a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to come over here and I want to select a fitting. And then I'm gonna exit out of this command, and notice that I'm gonna delete these 2 lines because I didn't want them. Okay, notice that these are in red because that's my conduit that I created, but the fitting is just a plain end PVC. So I'm going to select that fitting, and notice that I have a fitting that's also a conduit elbow EMT, RNC standard. Okay, I wanted the conduit elbow plain and PVC, and notice that it has different types available. I want the emergency high overhead, and now it's the red color because that's what I defined. All right. So I'm going to add another conduit. I'm going to select here. Notice, even though I moved this one to 6 inches from the edge, now I have another fitting. So I'm going to select this bottom connector. All right. And I'm going to say draw conduit from face. And I can adjust its position. And I'm going to say I want that 1 foot 6 inches from the edge. And then I'm going to green check finish connection. Okay. And now I'm still in the conduit tool where I'm adding a conduit. I'm going to still have the diameter set to 4 inches. But this time I'm going to set it to emergency low. So I'm going to say emergency low 120/208 overhead. Okay. And I'm going to bring it down maybe 4 foot 6 inches, and then a little bit to the left. Notice it's a different color, and I'm going to cancel out. And once again, my fitting just came out as a plain end. So I'm going to change the fitting to the emergency low underground. Okay. And notice it's dashed. Okay. Right. And if I wanted to change this to emergency low underground, I could do that. So some of it's above ground, some of it's below ground. I can change that so that when I do my conduit run schedules, it shows the correct lengths depending on what type of conduit I use. Right. So I'm going to select the panel again, and notice it gave me another connector. So as I consume different connectors, more get added. I'm going to say draw conduit from face. I'm going to adjust the distance to 2 foot 6 inches. Okay. Say finish. Okay, I'm going to say I want the normal low 120 overhead. I'm going to drag it down about 5 foot 6, and then go a little bit to the left, and then cancel out. And once again, I've got a fitting that I need to assign. So I'm going to set it to the normal low underground fitting. Notice it goes to dashed because it's underground. I'm going to select this conduit, say I want it to be the normal low underground. And why is it changing appearance? Because we assign those view filters. Okay. Gonna come back. Still has a new connector. I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna draw conduit from face. I'm gonna change this value. I'm gonna say 3 feet 6 inches. Okay. Say finish. Still 4 inches. Okay, I want this to be a normal high. 480/277 volt overhead. Okay, I'm gonna drag it down 6 foot 6 inches. And then just move it over to the left a little bit. Notice the color changed based on the type that I created. Okay, still have to change the fitting. So normal high underground. I'm going to change this to normal high underground. And right now, these just are displaying as thin lines. That has to do with the detail level. So if you want to see it, the thickness or the diameter of your conduits, you can set your detail level to fine, and then you see more of the conduits. And these center lines here that you see that are in black, those are what are used, the length of these lines are what are used to calculate your conduit, your conduit run schedules. So that's why you can't delete those lines, you can't change the visibility of those lines. Those are very important. Okay, going back to here. All right, and I just want to show you this slide. For your conduit fittings, in order for you to create a conduit run schedule, you do need to use the conduit family without fittings, and then assign the fittings that match the conduit family you place, just like I showed you. Okay, so I'm going to kind of show you again. And I'm going to close this. Not saving. Okay, so back in that section view where you can see the device panel and you can see the conduits. I want to go to my project browser. I want to go down into my conduits folder. And notice I have conduits with fittings and conduits without fittings. And you can see that I have different conduits here without fittings. And here are my conduits with fittings that I created. I'm going to highlight the emergency high 480 277 O-head. I'm going to right click and look at the type properties again. Okay, and notice that these are all set to the PVC standard. Okay. So I need to go back and find the families that I created. So I want to go to the emergency high. If this is the emergency high overhead, I want to use the emergency high overhead fitting. Okay, and I want to kind of go through and apply that. Okay. And I'm going to select the emergency high underground family. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select the emergency high because these have been defined with different colors so that it's going to make it easier for me to see what conduit is placed where. And I'm going to go to the emergency low 120 overhead. And notice I need to come over here and select that and click apply. And remember, if you click apply, that keeps the dialog box open. If you hit OK, then that closes the dialog box and you kind of have to start all over again. So I'm going to go to the emergency low underground. And again, I need to set it to use the emergency low underground family, the elbow. And I'm going to say okay. And so that's going to ensure that my conduit run schedule is going to be set up correctly. So I want to thank you for joining this webinar. I wanted to give a little bit of time for questions. I appreciate your time and your attention. Conduits are a lot, and I hope you'll consider coming to a future webinar. Not necessarily one of mine, but Vinsys has got several webinars on their schedule. You can go to their website and take a look at what's available in terms of online training and the value that Vinsys will offer you. And I thank Vinsys for sponsoring this webinar and giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge of conduits with you all. And I'm going to kind of open it up for questions for if people have any.
It looks like nobody has questions. If
Okay.
anyone has questions, please unmute yourself and you can talk to Elise. Otherwise, you can drop a message in the chat box. And if you have questions afterwards, after the webinar, then you can just email or write back to us. You can just visit our website. And I'm just typing an email ID where you can post all of your questions.
One of the values that Vinsys offers is they are an Autodesk authorized training center. So they do offer training in Autodesk software, which is awesome. And they have a lot of instructors all over the world to provide training online.
Thank you so much, Elise, for this wonderful webinar. Guys, we are scheduling lots of webinars in upcoming few days. So not only on all Autodesk products, but we are conducting webinars on project management. We are conducting webinars on cybersecurity. We are conducting webinars on cloud computing. So just stay tuned with us. Keep visiting our website. There is a landing page called webinars where you can go and visit, where you can check which webinars are running in this week or next month. And also you can write back to us. You can make an inquiry in the chat box, or you can just make an inquiry on our website. I thanks everyone who is joining the webinar, and I thank Elise for the wonderful session. You will keep getting informed about all the webinars that we are going to schedule in the future. And yeah, we would like to see more nominations. If you like the webinar, you can refer it to your colleagues. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you. I'm going to end the session now.